Welcome to The Sky's the Limit with host Dee Brown, the president and CEO of the P3 Group, the nation's largest minority public-private partnership real estate developer. Here's Dee.
Welcome to this episode of The Sky's the Limit. Joining me today is Grandon Gray, Chief Operating Officer for the P3 Group, Inc., and Erik Stevenson, Chief Data and Compliance Officer for the P3 Group, Inc. Gentlemen, welcome to The Sky's the Limit.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Listen, so we're doing exciting work at the P3 Group. I want to have you guys on the show today to just really talk about some of the things we're doing at the P3 Group, Brown Foundation, self-made brands, etc. So, Erik, tell me, what do you like most about working at the P3 Group?
The thing that really is impactful and what I love the most is the fact that we can do work in the communities, and the work that we do in communities it is impactful work. It's work that changes those communities. It uplifts those communities, and it brings something that otherwise might not be in the community. It changes the trajectory in a lot of ways for those communities. So that's very important for any work that I do, and I'm happy to be doing it on such a large scale.
So, Grandon, you had the opportunity to execute 3 projects in your hometown where you were born and raised, West Memphis, Arkansas. Talk to me about those projects and how that impacted you from a legacy perspective.
Yeah, I would definitely say that those West Memphis projects were very significant for me personally, professionally, and also for the city of West Memphis in general. But it's one of those things that sometimes you don't really think about the long-lasting impact that it may have when you're first, engaging with the client, but then once everything is over with, you understand that it's more than just a project. Right. And I think I think about with Fire Station number 3, with it being named after Chief Brewer. And Chief Brewer was someone that was significant for me and my family. He actually taught my daughter Taekwondo. Actually, on her 8th birthday, she received her black belt. And so he was always a man that was very respected in the community because, he carried himself professionally, but also he was a family man, and he had a love for the community. So, being able to be a part of a project that bared his name, you can't make those type of things up. Right.
And unfortunately, Chief Brewer, when he joined the West Memphis Fire Department, for 30 years, he lobbied the city and the mayor and city council for a new fire station. He said actually when he started working at the fire department, he was actually promised a new fire department, and he did not get it. And so new mayor came into office, Marco McLennan, who was very aggressive and progressive in his vision for West Memphis. Right. He right away entered into an agreement. I think he may have been in office 3 months before he contracted with the P3 Group to deliver the 2 new fire stations, a police substation, and a municipal courthouse. And fire station number 3 that you mentioned was named after Chief Dennis Brewer. And that was his dream. And I remember close to completion, going by just to look at the fire station and ran into him there. We took a selfie. He was just so excited. But unfortunately, Chief Brewer passed just weeks prior to the grand opening of the fire station. How did that impact you?
Yeah, so, obviously it was, I actually remember the day when he had actually went into the hospital. I actually was on the phone with Mayor McClendon, and Mayor McClendon said, "Hey, I can't talk. I'm actually, something's wrong with Chief. I'm actually going to the hospital." So, at that point in time, my thoughts were with him and his family. And so I didn't necessarily know what was wrong, what was going to happen. But, thankfully, I have a good relationship with Chief Brewer's wife, and she was there for the ribbon cutting. And, and actually there was some things that happened like right before and now that I think back, they actually had a celebration there in the city of West Memphis, and we were able to attend, and they gave, we were able to give Chief Brewer some pictures of the actual facility. So I'm actually thinking back to that.
Yeah.
And that happened like maybe a month or so before he passed. So I'm glad that we had that moment,
That's right.
Having that connectivity to his family.
Yeah.
And for them to think so much of us to actually be able to share in that moment. Because at the time, we didn't know what was going to happen. But now that I sit there and think back to it, that was a very significant moment for us. And I think for you too.
No doubt about it, man. It was one that, I never realized that I would become emotionally attached, to a project. But, that project did then and still does hold a lot of significance to me, as well as our legacy being that was the first capital project delivered under a public-private partnership in the state of Arkansas's history.
Right.
Eric, in your role at the P3 Group, you get the opportunity to meet with clients and potential clients around the country on a daily basis. In Harrisburg, Illinois, we're building a pre-K school, Bella Early Learning Academy for Harrisburg Community School District. And that represents one of the first K-12 P3 projects in the country. And so, and you have had a hands-on role with that from a, owner's rep perspective. Talk to me about that project and how it has impacted you professionally.
Well, that particular project, it's good to see it come out the ground. It's good to be engaged, like you said, from the very beginning of the project, and then understand the impact that it's had in that community. I've got school age kids myself. They're a little bit beyond the pre-K age. Yeah. But so I completely and holistically understand how important it is to have pre-K in communities. Harrisburg is one of those communities that has been in some ways overlooked, and then I have the same opportunities as some other communities. Yeah. So to be able to go in and find a path forward to build them a school that's so needed and it's just going to change the trajectory of that entire community for years and years to come. It's always you develop a sense of attachment to it because the impact that you're doing and the impact that you're having and what it's doing in that community. I think about when Grandon and I went up there and it being that very impactful project, and kind of a testament to how impactful it is. The actual principal who's going to be the principal of the school is she had already drawn on the back of a napkin what she envisioned the facility to look like. And so, and knowing how important it was, and how impactful it was to them, that they already had this image of what this is what our vision is going to look like. Right. And for us to be able to take that very drawing, take it, and then go through the process and give it to our architecture partners in Chasm, and then they bring it to life. And being able to see that and through those different iterations is so incredibly impactful. So, you take it from being able to know what the impact is going to have because of, your understanding of communities and education, early head start for schools. And we know that naturally that's a big ordeal. Then to go back and see like where it started from, to see that this is so ingrained in them that they were so ready. They didn't wait for the architect. They already drew it out and said, this is what we want to look like. Can you bring this to life? Right.
Well, what I was most about that project, though, is that the district had been working for several years trying to get this school built. And it was something that's very needed within that community. Right. And they never could figure out how to put that deal together and get it done within the budgetary constraints that they had. And not only did we deliver on bringing it in budget, we actually started construction in 78 days from the date that they signed the development agreement. And that's unheard of. It's amazing. I still can't believe that we did it in 78 days. Now, of course, Jefferson County was 80. And that was amazing. But I want to talk about, pivot and talk about Jefferson County projects, because you have a VA center and a memorial that honor the 8,000 veterans from the state of Arkansas that have lost their lives during previous wars. And that particular VA center is providing services for veterans that they were traveling to Little Rock an hour away to get those services. So not only do they have the services to the veterans, and now think about it, these are people that have paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Laid it on the line.
Laid it on the line for us, for the freedoms that we take for granted every day. And they didn't have a quality facility to get the services that they needed after paying that price to protect and serve for our freedom. And so then we have the health center. And now remember this, in the health center, the previous health center, rain,
mold,
rodents, the workers getting sick. And this is where the community was going to receive their health care.
Right.
To get well.
Yeah.
It's I mean, for me, it's that Jefferson County project, when you just talk about it, if you put the word public-private partnership in the dictionary and then you put a picture beside
right.
I really do feel that Jefferson County could be, to me, it is a model for what can be, because you had, you think of it from a partnership standpoint, all the different agencies, the different corporations, the Simmons Banks of the world, Arkansas Department of Health, obviously the county. But you also look into it, think about when it happened. I know
happened during COVID.
It happened during COVID. So that's amazing. I think we don't really talk about that a whole lot, but if you just kind of, when the dust is settled,
the whole process occurred like at the front end and all the way through COVID-19. And don't forget about the coroner's office. Yeah, state of the art coroner's office. It is absolutely. You walk in until you get to the, that it's a club, portion.
Club corner.
You don't realize what it is. You don't realize what it is.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful.
It's a beautiful facility.
But like you said, what really made it interesting about a $14 million project. Well, I guess it grew to about 18 million. Yeah, but you had Simmons Bank donate $1 million. Yeah. Arkansas Department of Health donated $700,000. Yeah. And of course, we brought the rest of the capital to make the project come to fruition. But when you talk about public-private partnerships, you had, community stakeholders. You have your state agencies that, are partnering on this facility. And then you have the county, and then you have the P3 group that did the design, build, finance on it. So it's like, I don't know of a better example of a public-private partnership than that, unless we want to pivot to Southeast Arkansas College.
Also, I just think that those projects, they really speak to, again, for me, I don't do anything that's not impactful.
Right.
I don't want to do work just to be doing work. Like, you can do that anywhere. But to do work that changes those communities. We talked about a veteran center, we talked about a health center, we talked about a coroner's office. We talked about facilities that were, at their worst in some cases. I think in the coroner's office, things are falling down.
Yeah. But you're talking about essential services to the community, because you think about it, the coroner's office. It's not just you got the deceased individual there, but you have the family that they left behind who have the right to come and view the remains of their loved one in dignity. Right. In a place that's clean and sanitary
and safe.
And safe. Yeah. And then you have a health department where how can you provide health care to the citizens in a facility that's not safe, that's not sanitary?
And I think, Dee, the other thing is, we talk about legacy. You think about each one of those buildings is named after someone. And you think about the legacy that each one of those individuals what they built over time.
Right. Each one of them built the community in some form. Whether it's from the state level, from the local level, they all built that community, and now they're enshrined on buildings because of what they did to the community, for the community.
Right.
And then you look at. I know we're talking about, especially with the Arkansas examples. You're talking about two cities in the state where West Memphis, Arkansas, being closer to Memphis. Minority community in terms of, you look at the population, Jefferson County and Ryan Bluff. These are two communities where, they're not nothing against some of the other parts of the state, like the Fayettevilles and the Little Rocks. I mean, but these are some of the towns that are kind of on the verge. They could go either way,
Right.
in terms of, economic vitality. So I think, these projects serve as a testament that, when you have strong leadership, when you have a firm that, whatever we say we are, we deliver.
Right.
And then you have other people that believe in the vision,
That buy into
that this is how we can revitalize communities, not just in the state of Arkansas, but obviously wherever we take it to Illinois and Harrisburg. But these are things that can happen all across the country. So for me,
Virgin Islands, South Carolina, I mean, and guess what? It's all the same.
Yeah, it's all the same.
The story is similar.
Everyone have ideas,
Right.
Right. And so the difference between the achievers and the underachievers is the ability to execute on those ideas.
Right.
When you embark upon something, whether you just got elected judge, mayor, or whether you're running a corporation, it comes with a vision. But your ability to put people around you, to surround yourself with the skills and the talent that allow you to execute on those visions or that vision is what differentiate the winners from the losers.
Yeah.
Everybody have a dream,
Yeah.
It's just, but
There's no shortage.
right. You have it every night.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But, let's talk about a little bit about the Brown Foundation and the work we're doing there, because it plays hand in hand with the P3 group, right? And so the foundation was established to provide educational or increase access to education for people of color, to help bring sanitary and decent housing to communities, to help relieve the burden of government and things of that nature. And so through the Brown Foundation, we have been doing work around the country. So whether it is the $150,000 endowment to Jackson State University, whether it's the $400,000-$500,000 we spent on sponsoring the Orange Blossom Classic and the many events and activities that we did in conjunction with that, or whether it is the endowment at Florida A&M University, the Attack on Hunger program that we launched, and that we are sponsoring the food pantry at Arkansas State University, Mid-South, for the next 5 years. I mean, the list goes on, but it's very impactful work. And I think as the founder of the foundation, and you guys serving on the board, obviously our missions and visions are aligned. But for me, I would just talk about what it means for me is just being able to go back into the communities that we operate our for-profit entities in. And we go into those communities and we earn money and we leave those communities better off than we found them. But to be able to go back on the philanthropic side and to be able to invest in whether it's our summer enrichment program where we're providing education to kids in those communities to help bridge the gap between the summer deficits that are created. Those sorts of things.
Which was incredibly impactful during COVID.
Right.
So I know we're seeing our way through the other side of the pandemic, but that was incredibly impactful to those communities that had a substantial gap in educational loss during those time periods. And so I think, I love the fact that we were going in and trying to essentially bridge that gap and make sure that those communities, many of which were already, had educational vulnerabilities.
Right.
We made sure that we did what we can, for example, in Harrisburg. Again, knowing how important early education was to that community, making sure we go in and we help bridge that gap. I think that's
right.
There's really no better work done than to invest in the future, and the future being children who really don't know what the future holds for them, but being able to give them the tools necessary as of now to do that. And so I love the foundation for that.
And I know for me personally, I'm one of those people where, my whole, I guess, forte is really trying to figure out how can I help people.
Right.
At my core, that's who I am. And I feel like if I don't have that ability to do that, I feel like I'm a fish out of water. So it's been very enlightening for me to be in a situation where I can, really be a part of the best of both worlds in terms of on a professional corporate side, being able to, be a part of an organization that's doing meaningful work. But on the flip side, have a philanthropic arm where we can give back, because so many times we look at how many times when you see corporations that come in and do work, they do whatever is needed and then they're gone. But we're the direct opposite. And not only are we doing it, but we're doing it during times when the cupboard was supposed to be bare. Yeah. And that's the amazing thing for me. And so it kind of, and I've said this once before, but I think about the Bible scripture that talked about being generous and just, how the world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller, whereas the world of the generous gets larger and larger. So I think, Dee, to your credit, don't stop doing that, because all it's going to do is the more that you do that, the world of the people that are around you, your employees, your friends, your colleagues, our worlds are going to continue to get larger because you have that vision, you have that heart to do that. So, so I think that's...
No, I think that when you reinvest in those communities that have helped make you who you are, you empower yourself. Mm-hmm. It's, to me, it's like there's not a true win in business if it's not cutting both ways. Right. It can't be all take. It has to be a give component. It has to be a give back component, a hand up versus a hand out component to make this whole machine thrive and move forward. And so from that philosophy, the Brown Foundation was birthed. Yeah. So let's talk about Self-Made with Dee Brown CEO, the PBS show that I have, and I got to figure out, I'm gonna have to get the dynamic duo on there some kind of way. but I think the vision behind that show is that we want to showcase positive images of people of color. And of course we have, a variety of individuals on it, but we're showcasing a lot of, African Americans and other, nationalities, but people of color. And I think that's just one of those messages sometimes that get lost. Get lost. And it has to be some kind of way that we consistently pump out positive images, positive stories of people of color, because there's so many unsung heroes. There's so many people out there doing things that how people don't know anything about. Right. So how can you envision or become something you've never seen? You don't understand. You can't even dream to become something that you've never seen. Right. So it's that exposure to, and it's not about everybody being a multi-millionaire. It's like people just being successful and performing at the highest level of their profession, in the career that they have chosen and the career that make them happy, and doing it at the highest level and leaving a positive impact in their community and making a difference, and making a mark on the world.
Yeah, I think, to your point there, if you don't push those images, if you don't create a mechanism to support those images, then they get lost in the shuffle of everything.
Right.
Yeah. It has to be directed. And it's not in a means to be, ostentatious or be any of that. It's to show that this is happening. Mm-hmm. It has been consistently happening, but we've got to put a spotlight on it. Yeah. And that is what I enjoy about that particular stream and series and that show, is that it highlights, every time I watch it, every time I see it, I learn something that I didn't know before. Right. An aspect about a nuanced industry, or something about, things that we take for granted. Like we think we know it all about, whatever industry, or, housing, or whatever it is, thinking about Vince's presentation.
Right.
But you always end up learning something, a lesson. And I think it's so important. How many lessons will not be learned or be missed if you don't put a spotlight on those things?
Right.
Yeah.
And these are people, quote unquote, they're self-made. They didn't come from, having a head start on life with this big pool pot of money. Not everyone came from extreme poverty,
Right.
but everyone came from ordinary circumstances, and that's whether their parents were trying to run a small business or whether they, were struggling on welfare and in, public housing. Everyone had to start from zero and make it work through loans, through, hard work, through ingenuity to get where they are.
Yeah.
And so you talked about Vince, having been the first and only person to serve as both chairman and managing director of the Chicago Housing Authority.
Right.
And to think about just the impact that his tenure had on public housing around the country. And so, I appreciate WTVP, PBS for giving me that platform, because I think that as that show continued to get disseminated weekly with new episodes and more positive content and more people learn about it and watch it nationally, that it's going to impact lives. Because again, if you haven't seen it, if you haven't heard of it, how do you sit back and dream or even understand the possibility of becoming it?
Right.
And so, I know
it's amazing.
Yeah, I know my circumstances, man, coming from a single mother household, raised significantly by my grandfather, and because without my grandparents, my mom wouldn't
be able to go to work.
Yeah. And understanding that, there was a time in life where, when we went on vacation, we loaded up the car. we got the cooler. And we put the Coca-Colas, the fried chicken, the sandwiches.
I laugh when you say vacation.
Hey, and you ride the Six Flags, and if you probably gonna stay with relatives, and if you're lucky, if you're extremely lucky, you may stay in the motel.
Right.
You're definitely gonna be entering the door from outside. You wouldn't be no interior corridor. So I'm talking about self-made. I'm talking about starting from nothing.
And I think and I don't know why I just keep, as I'm sitting here, we just conversing. I keep thinking about the timing of this all, and just think about what we've gone through as a country in the last several years.
Right.
And with everything from the George Floyd to the insurrection to all of that, and a lot of the spotlight has been on people of color, and it's kind of shifted. And so we always have that question that Dr. Martin Luther King always would pose: where do we go from here?
Right.
So I think that self-made TV and that platform is could fill that role and answer the question, like, where do we go from here?
Right.
And I think the other thing it points to it. And I think the other thing, Dee, we had dinner last night, and I'm not going to say the person's name, but just thinking about the guests that come on the show. And when you ask your guests, I mean, they're friends, a lot of them are friends, or they have a connection, and they're going to say, I do it. But you don't really understand kind of, what they're thinking. But honestly, it allows that platform and them telling their story and the guests being able to see their story. I think in some ways it kind of reinvigorates them.
Right.
Because, some of these folk may have thought like, man, I don't, all the things that I've done, does anybody even appreciate it?
Right.
Like who's actually
right? Anybody, everybody aware?
Or like, you could have, somebody at a crossroads professionally, like, hey, like what's my next act? Like, what am I gonna do next?
Right.
And so I think that show, I think it actually it edifies your guests too.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we also need to be mindful of, because they have a very significant story. And I think having this platform gives them that, that pat on the back, say, hey, you can keep going, keep doing what you're doing. Don't just settle for what you have done. You have a lot more that you can do. So.
Yeah. And I'm gonna pivot a little bit and talk about, because I think this is important but this kind of stemmed from our professional development meeting early today. And so, but I think it's something that people should hear this, because I feel like, and I think based on our conversation, you all would agree that as African Americans, we are trained to be mediocre. Like, there's nowhere for us to go in a formal environment, college, high school, unless, maybe if you're playing sports, you can get it.
Yeah.
You can get it from sports. But where are they training us to be like hardcore visionaries, leaders, thick skin, stick to itness, do it, kind of people? Because here's the reality. The world is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard here. It's not fair.
Yeah.
We can say, we won't equal this, we won't equal that. But at the end of the day, it's not fair, right? It's not fair that you can go home tonight and you can eat lamb chops if you desire. But guess what? A bird's going to eat a worm. That's not fair either, right? But it's the reality of it. It's the reality of the world we live in, right? And so I was listening to a younger employee, and I'm not going to say his name on the show, but he talked about the fact that criticism, when you get criticized, that if you don't get criticized in the right way, it can make you lose motivation or make a person shut down. And I think that comes from training to be mediocre, because when a person criticizes you, it's either true or it's false. Okay, don't worry about the delivery of the message.
Right.
It's either true or false, right?
Right.
If it's true, you self-evaluate and say, you know what, I may not like the delivery, but they're telling the truth. And I'll give you something. I had an ex-girlfriend in college that said something negative about me. And I thought about it. I was like, well, it was true. I mean, so I couldn't really be mad about it, right? I just, other people like, man, you're not mad? Like, no, well, actually, it's true.
Right.
No, well, I'm mad.
Yeah.
But if you don't develop, you can't allow what people say to motivate you or break you down or demotivate you. That's something that has to be internalized.
Right.
If your mindset is that I'm going to be the best version of myself, that means I'm willing to overcome every odd, every obstacle to do just that. And so, Erik, how you deliver a message to me is not going to change that motivation.
Right.
If you deliver a message to me and you're totally inaccurate about what you're saying, then I'm going to give my rebuttal as to why I think you're inaccurate. But if you give me a message and you're right, I have to own that.
Right.
No matter how you say it to me, I have to own it. Right. And so one thing that people learn when they play sports is that sports train you to be a true leader and winner. If you played in a good sports environment, I would have to kind of quantify that. But it trains you, because guess what? I don't care if you're playing in high school, college, or NFL.
Right.
That coach is going to be in your face. That coach is going to be in your face if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And they're not going to sit down and sit you down like a baby and say, now listen, Johnny, can you just hold the football just a little tighter when you come out the backfield, because some reason they keep shaking loose every time they hit you. Can you just squeeze it a little bit tighter, Johnny? No. It's not because you got freaking hold that ball, or you're going to freaking be on the bench. Right? And that's the same thing in business.
The object is to win.
Hey, the object is to win. And you're going to either take that, if you're going to perform at the highest level, you're going to take that criticism and you're going to react to it by making yourself better, or you're going to find yourself, you're going to leave that position and go find somewhere to work that they settle for mediocre.
Yeah, but I think too,
performance.
I think too, and I can say that because, we've been working now almost going on 3 years now, and so it's just one of the things that it's all about. Sometimes in those scenarios, like you're gonna have to take your lumps. You have to build that trust. There are certain conversations that Dee and I would have in our old office upstairs, and I knew what my capabilities are, but I knew it was all about us learning each other.
Right.
And so my mindset was like, okay, like if he said, hey, you need to do this, or hey, you didn't, we had some type of exchange, I just took it as, okay, I just need to get better. Like, I'm going to tighten it up. Like, whatever that was, I knew that I had to do that. And I just knew if I kept doing it consistently, we weren't going to have those conversations all the time.
Right.
So I think part of it is that, at the moment it may not feel good, but that you just had to have that mindset like, okay, from this moment forward, I'm going to establish a record of trust.
Right.
And performance and outcomes. And I think that's part of how you can.
And that's how you end up and that's how he ended up in a leadership role where he run the operation for the most part, because what he may not have understood then that he get now is that I'm trying to put you in a position where you're gonna, I trust you. I know you're gonna perform. Nobody's perfect, right? So you can't have that.
I mean, I could get an email tomorrow. So
maybe I want draft.
It's probably drafted already.
Yeah.
But I think in the point that I think in our past and discussion that we had about this too, I think that in experience in the sports or military, where a lot of my team building background comes from. What the core thing too that you not always have to ask, but the thing that is key to focus on, opposed to the whatever the tone of the criticism is the intent. The intent is to get better. Right. The coach is telling you, hey, Johnny, you stink right now, because he wants you to understand that, hey, this is not what is gonna. You can't do this and win. If you continue to do this, we're not gonna win. Whether the drill sergeant comes over and tells you all the things that you don't want to hear. Yeah. But it's in order for you to accomplish the mission and develop that muscle memory. So when it's time to perform, there's no question about it. And so the difference is that intent. They are preparing you, that whoever that leader is, whether it's drill sergeant, whether it's CEO, whether it's a coach, they're preparing you to win, and they're doing so from a place of I want you to win.
They see something in you, and quite frankly, if they don't do it, that's where you need to be.
That's where you need to
concerned.
They're doing you disservice.
Right. That's what should be motivated. If someone let you do a half performance and everybody's okay with it, that means that you are not going to get better. It's not possible.
They've given up on you.
When I played football, I've told this story before. What I learned, I lost my 10th grade year because I transferred between school districts, and I couldn't play my 10th grade year. And so my 11th grade year, the number one outside linebacker was a senior. And so I'm saying to myself, like, if I'm going to play, I got to figure out a way to knock this guy off, because, he had the rite of passage. He had earned that position. And so I was thinking, and I think that's the day that I decided I was going to have basically two speeds, on and off, And so that day we went out to practice, and then we had on helmets, T-shirts, and shorts. And we run and play, so it's supposed to be, you touch them, you pat them, whatever. And I went out and I was knocking. I'm talking about I was knocking you. If you got that ball in your hand, I was talking to you. Everybody was mad at me, man. I got in a few scuffles that day. But we're doing 2 a day. That was the first practice, my first, summer practice of my junior year in high school. And I'll never forget that, man. We came back to the second practice of that afternoon. I was the number one linebacker. and what I did every day from that day forward, when we practiced, I practiced like it was a game. And people would get mad at me. Some of my friends would say, man, I got to play Friday night. We tell coach, don't put you on scout team. Yeah. Because if you got the ball, you come my way, I'm playing like it's Friday night.
Yeah. That tells a lot. And every time I hear this story, I get something new out of it. But that right there gives me a lot of insight into how when I first started, when you and I would do a lot of the pursuits. And part of me was waiting. I was like, okay, so when's this training gonna happen? Like, now we in there, we get it done. And it's like you train on the job, and I was just like, okay, this is what we're doing. Yeah. All right,
because listen, if you sat through interval board meetings or presentation, you cannot predict.
You can't
what's going to come out of some people's mouths, based on a variety of reasons, some good, some bad, but you just never know. And so it's one of those things where, you have to be quick. You have to be swift. Because you never know what you're going to have to respond to.
And what that tells me is you've got to be confident and assertive in where you are. You can't control the other variables.
Right.
You don't know, like you just said, you don't know what that council person is going to say or what that person on that board is going to say. You just got to be prepared in what you are confident in and your ability to deliver.
Right.
Everything else is secondary.
Yeah, but I will say this though. The moment is the moment. You have to be prepared, but at the same time, there are little things that thinking about practice and things of that nature. There are little things that you can do to get ahead before the game.
Right.
Oh, right.
So you have a client and. If you know who the client is, and to me that's the advantage. If you tell me who the client is, you best guarantee that before we have a conversation,
that's where you thrive.
Yeah,
I'm gonna figure out every angle.
You know everything about it.
And it may come up during that time period that we're actually meeting. It may not, but the preparation is big too. Not just in this industry, but just a lot of other industries as well. So you do have to be prepared.
So let's talk about HBCU.
YOU.
With Dee Brown CEO. YOU. HBCYOU. Now, the first episode aired on Tuesday.
Okay.
The 5th of April.
Mm-hmm.
Me, of course, I'm the host. Lodrick Collins from the Oval. Palmer Williams Jr. from House of Pain. All of us Noops. They're like all of us Noops too.
Yeah.
Right? But coincidentally, first episode. But it was interesting. It was an interesting dynamic because we had two actors that both worked for Tyler Perry Studios.
Okay.
House of Pain and the Oval, both Tyler Perry shows. And so it was they had never met, been in the studio together, different parts of the studio, different sets or whatever, but had never met in person before. Obviously knew of each other,
right,
because of their roles within the various Tyler Perry productions. But so that was an interesting variable as well. But more importantly, the show HBCU. And so here I am. I went to an HBCU for a year, graduated from the University of Memphis. And of course, you guys went to PWIs as well. Mm-hmm. But we find ourselves in terms of our philanthropic endeavors, we're 100% HBCUs and minority serving institutions is where our hearts are.
Right.
Because we recognize that regardless of what our educational experiences may have been, we recognize the value more now than ever before that those institutions play in communities of color. This show is very similar in some ways to Self-Made, but then in other ways, very, very different.
Right.
Whereas in Self-Made, when a guest come onto the show, we talk about their childhood to now. We basically taking that journey through your life to understand who you are, where you are, whatever. Whereas with HBCU, the journey pretty much starts on how did you end up at North Carolina A&T, or how did you end up to go to Jackson State or Alcorn, or I had one guest on who had undergrad from Alcorn and graduate degree from Jefferson State. Two rival institutions, right? And so, of course, we play on that. So we joke around about that. We talk about the homecomings. We talk about
who they.
They say a house divided.
She chose Alcorn on the show. She got an undergrad from Alcorn. So, but what is it like on game day at Alcorn? Because it's different than Southern. Yeah, what's the signature event at Florida A&M? What's your signature event that the campus is known for? And it's the set on Friday. They have the set on Friday, the DJ, and everybody's out on the yard, and it's a festive occasion. Who has the best band?
That's a debate.
That's a debate. Who has the best band? What is the culture like, especially when you have guests that have degrees from or experiences from HBCUs and PWIs, like me, where you can see the distinct difference,
right?
In that whole culture. Like when I was at Alcorn, it was more community. Like everybody knew each other. It was like a big family.
Right.
The teachers really, to me, cared about whether you came to class or didn't come to class. Yeah. There was one guest that came on and told a story of how he was going to skip class, and the teacher was at his dorm knocking on the door, telling him, "Come on, you're not skipping the day." Yeah. And how he's a medical doctor.
Right.
And he was planning on leaving Alcorn to be a coach and a teacher.
Right.
But because his major was biology, they made everybody who was in biology take the MCAT.
Right.
He had scored so high on the test until I think it was like an hour of medical school or whatever, came to the campus to interview him and recruited him and admitted him to med school. And he called his mom, like, I'm going to accept the med school, trying to decide what I'm going to do. He's like, no, you already decided. You're going to med school. And so then he talked about the culture shock of leaving Alcorn, being dropped off in Iowa in the middle of a cornfield where he didn't know anyone.
Right.
And then, it was only a small percentage of African Americans on the campus.
Yeah.
And he said he really didn't get settled in until he found out where the nukes hang out, and he ended up finding the nukes, and he kind of found but he said he called home several times, said, Mama, I'm coming home. Mama said, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
Right. Put the phone on him, so he couldn't go home.
Yeah, but I would say, again, I guess I keep going back to the timeliness of this all. I mean, there was so much of a spotlight on HBCUs. I know a lot of it had to do, with a lot of the things that were going on the last couple of years and around the country. But, again, we just can't make this up about the work that we do from our side of development. And there are so many needs, facilities needs and educational needs on a lot of these different campuses. And it's like, man, how all of this has kind of came full circle. That's the thing that amazes me.
Yeah. But when you think about that, and so you talk about this person that went to Alcorn, or you talk about the person that went to North Carolina A&T, who is now, running ESPN events, or you talk about the person with Alcorn is now they're a medical doctor, or the young lady that left Jackson State as a STEM major, went to Ohio State University School of Law, and now she's on Wall Street working for S&P, running a $5.2 trillion portfolio of credit. And so when you look at these achievements, again, it goes back to a person can't visualize what they can't see. And so we're not only just telling that whole story, the experience, the Kappa party, which is some of the best stories on the show about the Kappa party.
Because those are the best parties.
That's a whole nother show.
You got all of those variables. And then this person, at the end of the day, is still successful, still living a very successful life. And they did it all off the back of HBCU. And then you think about, prior to, the end of segregation, there weren't very, very many educational opportunities for people of color beyond high school unless you went to an HBCU. And of course, now we are allowed to attend school anywhere. And I'm not knocking anyone's decision because every decision is different and unique.
Multiple factors.
But here's what we know: more than 50% of African Americans score below college readiness on their exams, and many institutions won't accept them.
Right.
HBCUs are the ones that they have to turn to. HBCUs graduate 20% of the African American college graduates every year, but only 10% of African Americans are enrolled in HBCUs. 50% of African American teachers, 50% of African American teachers graduate from HBCUs. 70% of African American dentists graduate from HBCUs, even though HBCUs only account for 3% of the overall institutions that have higher education, right? So they still play a critical role. Now there are criticisms, like obviously there infrastructure, facilities, technology improvements that are needed at many HBCUs. But I think the key is that we have to get together and demand the funding and the resources to bring those institutions up to the level of the PWI counterpart.
And I think it starts with us really understanding, what the situation is, what they don't have, and what other institutions are receiving. Because again, we know that things are not always going to be fair. They historically and traditionally haven't been. But given that we know that things aren't, we need to understand, okay, well, this is what they need. This is what these students need to grow.
Right.
And so, I love the fact that, we're engaging in that space and asking the question, what do you need? That's
Right.
That's how when we start a pursuit, or if we're doing anything there, that's how we start a conversation is, what do you need?
Yep.
And not what we need. What do you need?
What we do is always about the end user, the client, right? It's not about us.
We understand so much how the culture, what the culture of HBCU graduates has given, us. I think in any family, in any African American family, somebody that's an HBCU graduate, and 9 times out of 10, they are a pillar within the community.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, it has been a great episode of The Sky's the Limit. I almost forgot what show I was shooting today. It's been a great episode.
Keep track.
Sky's the limit to self-made
HBCU. But thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. And thank you for watching this episode of The Sky's the Limit with Dee Brown CEO.
This has been The Sky's the Limit with Dee Brown, CEO. To find out more about Dee, go to dbrownceo.com or Google Dee Brown CEO. To connect with the P3 Group, check out thep3groupinc.com. The Sky's the Limit is a self-made TV original production.